In order to give you guys a fairly thorough analysis of what the possible price impact for XRP could be with everything going on now that we have a number of bills passing through the House and a lot more clarity when it comes to the crypto space, I have been analyzing the markets and all of the current catalysts that are going to be happening to XRP. And if we get a bullish case scenario here, I have to say that you guys should buckle up because I'm going to thoroughly break it down in today's video. My earlier projections for the possible peak of the XRP price were really much more conservative than previously believed. It's very wonderful to have a lot of these tools and be able to use AI the way I am to really break things down the way I'm going to show you. So I want you guys to pay careful attention to what I'm going to show you. In essence, I visited Grok and began asking it a few questions based on a few of the most recent market developments. I responded, well, given the recent spike in XRP price and all the recent crypto legislation, how much more do you think XRP could rise by the end of 2026 hypothetically if the Fed were to lower rates to 1%? Now that Trump is pushing for it, I give it a long time frame and use the 1% because they want to replace Jerome Powell right now and get him fired and possibly imprisoned for what they say is fraudulent activity on his part. Having said that, I do believe that a 1% Federal Reserve rate is something that might happen very soon, and it would significantly affect the market. Although we are aware of this, Grok's breakdown of the figures gives us a much clearer picture of how that might appear. Here is a breakdown of the effects of a 1% interest rate. Naturally, it will make people more willing to take risks. Because fixed income assets are less appealing due to the low rates, institutional and retail investors are being drawn to higher yield options like cryptocurrency or XRP. Because more money may come into the cryptocurrency markets as a result of lower borrowing costs, it will also increase liquidity. We have observed this association. In fact, the association with M2 is almost 90%. Additionally, a lower interest rate may cause the US dollar to decline, which would make dollar-denominated assets like XRP seem more appealing. We have repeatedly witnessed this occur with stocks as well. Oh well, that's basically how more people are drawn to the cryptocurrency sector by reduced interest rates. So that we can observe Grok attempts to project the possible increase in XRP based on all of this information. Full beef. As you can see, a 1% rate drop might increase capital flows into cryptocurrencies and cause XRP to move closer to the higher end of projections. Because of the increasing liquidity and investor enthusiasm, XRP may rise as much as 223%, from $8.80 to $11.80 to $11. 7. If we assume a 50% premium on the positive forecasts, Grok concludes by stating that, in a more optimistic scenario, even a $15 per XRP price objective is feasible, provided that the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates to 1%. That doesn't take anything else into account. That doesn't account for ETF, the secret road acquisition, or anything else. The next thing I naturally asked Grok was, what would be a bullish estimate for XRP price in that environment if XRP ETFs see net inflows of over $100 billion on top of all of the other considerations we've already mentioned previously? Therefore, it goes without saying that ETF have a significant influence on the price of Bitcoin. In fact, I believe that the $100 billion in inflows are a realistic prospect over the course of the next 18 months or so. I put something out there for that reason. Basically, it's been a year and a half. What do you think might occur? Grok explains the effects of this right here, stating that if $100 billion enters XRPTS and all of the money is used for XRP purchases, the extra demand may be met by the supply that is already in circulation. If you add $100 billion to the existing market capitalization of $203 billion, it rises to $303 billion. If the ETF inflows alone were to occur, the new price per XRP would be $5.12. However, there are also market impacts, which results in a speculative multiplier. A conservative multiplier of 2-3x on the ETF-driven price increase is appropriate given XRP existing ETF reputation. Previous cryptocurrency bull runs demonstrate that altcoins like XRP can see 5-10x surges in bullish markets due to retail and institutional momentum. As you can see, this snowball will get bigger when we include the 1% Fed rate drop. Naturally, escrow releases should also be taken into account because they will increase the supply, which is typically locked back up, but I'm getting off topic. Having said that, a bullish estimate would be between $20 and $25 when accounting for the Fed lowering rates and $100 billion in ETF inflows. Albeit you can see that there are a lot of different predictions here. Fun. And I believe there is a good chance that both of those things will happen in the upcoming 18 months. I don't believe that this is an unreasonable request on our part. That's really awesome, in my opinion. And for that reason, I'm usually setting my price target here. Correct? Target here, correct. I estimated it at $20 to $25. Okay, this seems like a pretty good estimate. However, there is one more element that I find quite challenging to determine on my own. Therefore, in order to provide you guys with a rather intriguing response, I also plugged this into Grok. I said, give me an optimistic price estimate if XRP sees a few trillion in additional daily transaction volumes throughout the year as a result of its acquisition of Hidden Road, and if it also takes over about 10% of SWIFT volume, in addition to the previously mentioned factors, such ETF inflows and the Fed NIOTA's lowering rates, I would like to draw attention to the following. 100 billion ETF inflows, the Fed reducing interest rates to 1%, 10% of SWIFT volume, XRP capturing merely 10% of SWIFT volume, and of course, Hidden Roads. We already know that the Ripple team intends to essentially delay the XRP ledger's Hidden Roads transactions, thus, simply connecting all those parts. Here, that is what we are doing. Having said that, if we take into account all I just described, the price may actually hit $100 to $150 by the end of 2026 in a hyper-bullish scenario. Only 10% of SWIFT's volume is represented by that. And that is, of course, if Hidden Road isn't expanding at an exponential rate because they are more efficient than their transaction costs are lower. You see, this is really just demonstrating to you all that XRP has a lot of potential here. So lot of potential here. Given that the price now is, less than a 30th of that, it is absurd that $150 by the end of 26 will be an even feasible. Correct. $3.40 per XRP now, that is. I mean gains of 30x. I believe we can all agree that this bullish estimate is based on the Grok base case. That's a significant amount of price growth, and it could make a lot of people extremely wealthy. This is the reason I believe you are aware that many individuals may be lying about you. The XRP bullish case, I suppose. To be clear, I believe this to be a very bullish situation. There are numerous positive developments for XRP. However, considering that we meet those requirements, this is a fairly realistic estimate. Despite what many people think, we are not actually capturing all of Switzerland's volume. That is not likely to occur. In my opinion, in order to provide you guys with this response, I didn't want to incorporate that into this model. Or, we're hit by highways that are expanding exponentially, which is also a possibility, but it's not like that. And that doesn't even include the fact that many banks are providing crypto custody services, which we also know will begin to appear in America, Europe, and possibly even Canada and Australia. Volvera that alone might push XRP volume to billions of dollars. Isn't that right? There are a lot of components to this puzzle. In order to demonstrate to you all the possibilities of XRP, I just thought I would put everything together. Because, in my opinion, it's much better than many of you realize. This has a lot of upward potential. That is a 28.15% rise. Up to a 4,273% rise from 343 or 341%. We're currently kind of floating about that range, That is really fantastic. I was aware that might put our market capitalization at about $8 trillion, which once more, I believe is not unachievable within the next 5 years. In any case, I do believe that's where XRP will be in 2030 if we don't accomplish it in 2026. If the acceptance of cryptocurrencies keeps growing at this rate, I believe XRP is in a perfect position to do that. Anyway, Having stated that, I'm currently preparing to execute a variety of trades, including XRP.